Hello, everybody, and welcome to PGS Treks. I am your host, Artem, and of course, tonight we have with us Julian Mushkin. Julian, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, RM. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful, and we are here to discuss this incredible episode, episode 3, 17 seconds of Picard, season 3, episode 3. Um, and honestly, Julian, we left off where Picard has decided that he's more or less going to take control, at least for a moment, of what's going on with the ship. And I have to personally say, Julian, that seeing LaForge, let's say the young LaForge, young girl LaForge, the captain, Picard, and Riker on the bridge. It's absolutely mesmerizing. I mean, it feels so good to like see them going this back and forth banter about what to do. And I think it's also very interesting because it's very clear that things have gone very, very bad on the ship. And I do want to welcome the new member, THY Lacine 23. Hi. And also son of a John, my gosh, for a $9.99 super chat says Vodka's genetically engineered enemy. Oh, right. That is so great to let us know. Vulcan, Andorian, Dominion, Elorian, Cardassian DNA is that is a great thing to know. Thanks so much, son of John, for sharing your.
Where do we find that out?
I have no idea, but that's good to know. Also, it is very interesting to see this kind of comment, not only about the fact that everybody's on the ship bridge, and it feels like they have to be on their toes right now. Like this is, and we know that this is happening over a certain period of time, but the episode is called 17 Seconds, Julian. And we kind of get this flashback of when Riker was talking about the birth of his son, and 17 seconds is the amount of time that it takes to take the turbo lift from, and correct me if I'm wrong, from the bridge to sickbay. Am I right?
At least on the Titan that he was on at the time, yes. That was interesting to get that little backstory. It had me thinking about when I was a new father myself. So.
It really was touching. I mean, it kind of grabbed you because just a few moments ago we found out or got a definitive confirmation, or maybe it wasn't entirely definitive confirmation, as Beverly had said, yes, this is your kid. And, of course, we know that the conversation that we have absolutely. Oh, son of a John says it's a theory. Hey, son of a John, you rock, son of a John. I love this. You should write this stuff too. It sounds good, son of a John. And something, I wouldn't be so shocked if you were right, partially because her entire crew are all like masked. Why don't they want us to see her crew? Is there something about their physical appearance that's disarming or gives away something about them? Maybe they are engineered as well. Who knows? Hey, son of a John, you keep up that creativity. This is a great storyline, right? Julian, thank you for sharing it with us. And thank you for your generosity, son of a John, for $9.99. That is very generous. We do appreciate that here at the Burnettwork, soon to be Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited. You are a gem. Live long and prosper, son of a John. But you know something, Julian? It is very interesting because now Jean-Luc is in this position, of course, hearing Riker's story. We got to even see Deanna for a second saying, hey, don't forget to bring the whiskey. Don't forget to bring the whiskey.
That was an imperative.
It was. And I really loved it. I think that that was very interesting because, of course, Picard now can understand in the blink of an eye. Picard suddenly understands what's going on here. And I just love how that happened, Julian. It was really as if, a train hit him or something. Is Picard different? Right now, is he different, Julian?
Different? I'm not sure. Different in what way?
Are his motivations and decision-making processes different now that he's found out about his son on the ship?
Certainly, I think it has added a variable to his decision-making process, and looks like it. As the episode progresses, we have to question if he is making decisions fully based on that, or what is he thinking fully about it and taking everything into consideration.
Yeah, because there's no one for him to kind of bounce this off with, is it? There isn't. You can't really necessarily go to Riker and say, well, I want to talk to you about this. They don't have time for that, Julian. This is so pressured. This is like maybe unfair, but is the fact that he is, this new body give him an advantage to absorb all this information differently? I have to wonder about this. And Carlos Font says, hello, Carlos. Thank you so much for your $10 super chat here on the Burnettwork. We so appreciate it. Says, I can't get over how unabashedly Trek, the U.S. Titan A, and the end credits are. Had tears in my eyes for the first time I heard it. The episode really captured how I felt when my daughter was born. Carlos. Oh my gosh, Julian, what do you think of that?
Like I said, yeah, when Riker was talking about how he suddenly felt this weight and how he would do anything, for his child, and I remember looking at my daughter right after she was born and feeling this sense of, actually for me it was a total fear. It was this fear that now, I have this person I am responsible for, and if something were to happen, how devastating it would be to me if something happened to her. So I totally understood that, and I felt what Riker was saying when he was talking about that. I do find it odd that Picard talks about not having a family, and yet in the Inner Light episode, he actually has a lifetime with a family and raises a son and a daughter. And I have to wonder, Terry Metallison's group have done such a good job of incorporating lots of Trek lore, and especially stuff from Next Generation. And I'm interested in why, perhaps just didn't serve the storyline for them to poke at that a little bit. Maybe, but he, in the beginning of the series, he has, the season, he has the Roselkin flute in his hand, and he's like, what's he going to do with this? And obviously that's something that has stayed with him. So I thought, did some of those feelings, the memories fade away from when he had it? Because it's been years and years since that happened. But it's an odd thing when you go, how does that really work? Because he did have a lifetime with a family, and maybe he has figured that was not really my family. Maybe he separated himself from it, but I don't know. It's not. Maybe it'll be mentioned later on in the series. Who knows? That would be kind of cool for them to bring that up. I think it's a natural, since like Rob said, this series seems to be centering around family and what you would do for your family members, whether they are the amalgamated family of a Starfleet, ship family, or an actual biological family. It's all kind of the same.
Well, that is a very interesting answer. And we also have Joe Panora for a $5 super chat. Hello, Joe. And thank you so much for the super chat. We so appreciate it. Joe says, let me know if I'm crazy, but was Jack's vision reminiscent of Sisko's visions with the prophets, or was that just me? No, it wasn't just you, Panora. It was quite a deliberate vision that involved 7 of 9 and branches reaching out, and she had, it was, her hand was kind of, she kind of touched him on his chest, and it was symbolic of something. There was a door, the door opened. It felt almost very 2001-ish to me. I don't know how did you feel about it, Julian? It certainly was an eye-opening vision, not an ordinary vision. It meant something. I don't know what it meant, but something about it was very important. What did you think?
Well, this note from Joe is certainly something I hadn't picked up on, but given the revelation of the changelings and their involvement with, the wormhole in the Bajoran space, it seems like certainly that could very well be something that's united with it. I didn't have that thought when I saw it, but I certainly felt that it's something that we're going to come back to, that it's going to be important to the unfolding of the story somehow, that perhaps it's part of the reason why Vadic wants him so badly.
I hadn't thought about that there, Julian. You certainly struck a chord and a nerve right there. It's like, oh my gosh, that's true. Keep going.
No, that's all I can think of right now. I'm still trying to figure out if the changelings, that we find out later on in the episode, that changelings are behind the theft of the stuff from Daystrom, that they were involved as a diversionary method to use the portals on the recruitment center for something else, which we have yet to find out what it is, that would be worse than the portal weapon. Somebody also, I saw on Rob's stream today, somebody mentioned that they wondered, they mentioned the Iconians, which were a race that were long dead and gone, that we saw in Next Generation, and they used portal technology also. And I was like, yes, you're right. The Iconians used the portals, and maybe the portal from Daystrom was some sort of offshoot research from studying the Iconians, which would be very interesting.
It is very interesting, and I can't help but think that we are given a lot of clues in this episode, Julian. Everything down from how the nebula has biological signatures, which would suggest some sort of sentient being, I don't know, or many sentient beings, or something that feels not sentient, but living beings, or something like that. And then, of course, at some point, and I can't ignore this part in the episode, there has to be that conversation. And I think we all know the "why didn't you tell me I had a son" conversation, in a nutshell, where we do get the backstory of many love affairs between the two of them, which makes sense in a way. And of course, one moment where she realized what had happened, and where she talks about being afraid that she could not defend, her own child, let alone Picard's child. And then her admission that she felt she had a premonition that they were after, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, guys. Beverly thinks that somebody is after Jack because he's Picard's son. Is there any relevance to this?
I don't get that sense from Vadic. I think she would have been like, kind of like rubbing it in Picard's face. She certainly knows who Picard is, but she hasn't brought that up. And I think that given how she has behaved, I think she would totally stick that in and twist that knife if it was involved somehow. So I think it's something else. But I don't know. It's interesting in the conversation that Beverly and Jean-Luc have, and lots of people online have said, oh, it's a rehashing of Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, and Kirk had a son, and all this kind of stuff. But there's a specific difference in that, with David Marcus, Kirk knew that he had a son, and Carol Marcus asked him to stay away, and he did that out of what she asked him to do. She didn't want him getting, caught up in all the Starfleet stuff. She wanted her son to be her son. And so Kirk did that. So he knew he had a son. He just stayed away. Picard did not have that choice. He did not know that he had a son running around out there. And certainly he has a point. It was unfair of her to, not give him that choice to make. As I do kind of agree with Beverly that it would be difficult to think that Picard, specifically at the time of in his life, if we go by the things that they've given us in the first 2 seasons, that he would find himself able to commit to a choice of getting out of Starfleet and trying to raise him as a son. I don't know if it's like, yes, it would have been fair for her to give him that choice, but I think she was right that he probably wouldn't have been able to make that choice fully. So.
And it's interesting that we also are getting, you talked about how this is about family, and we are seeing a lot of the family elements here between Rafi's situation with her family, and how, she's kind of, in a situation where she's excited about being able to fight against this evil, but it is kind of costing her family relationship because, even now looking back at her, her ex who was saying, did you want me to put in a good word? It's almost as if he wants her to come back. He's almost secretly fighting to get her back, but he does also know she's doing something that's very courageous. So even he at the same time is sacrificing, but he's very angry with her because she's doing that. But he's almost hoping in being there. You could almost, there's like a little flint of hope. Maybe you do want to come back. Maybe I could put in a good word for you. Why don't you come over, and we can talk about it. Was it where the conversation didn't get to go because of everything that's going on? So it's interesting to kind of see these family situations. We saw, of course, Riker and his 17-second comment with Deanna. And then, of course, we see the situation with Beverly and her son. And of course, now Picard and Beverly have that comment, going back and forth. And, I also want to mention that I don't think Picard is going to forgive her for not telling him. I think he's very upset with her about this, and he'll still talk to her. But this was, for me, I personally think, she should have told him. That's just my opinion. And she could have said, I don't think we should be together anymore, whatever it was. But he had a right to know. That's how I feel about it. He's not a bad guy. He's not evil. He doesn't hurt people. So there was no reason to kind of, shelter the news from him. But Julian, we also find out in the midst of all of this that there is some odd sabotage going on the ship. And, this idea that 7 of 9 keeps getting contacted by everybody in the ship. First, LaForge goes to her and says, you know what? You're great. I'm great. We belong here. So don't let anybody like this pep talk. But what I really think that was about, there had to be some kind of contact or way that they were communicating with each other. And so we don't know this yet, but there had to be some reason why she needed to communicate with her. This pep talk, which sounded rehearsed, was rehearsed, but she had to somehow meet with 7 of 9. I don't know why, but I'm guessing there was something behind that. Maybe it was an alert or a way to tell her what's going on the ship. I'm not sure, but there was no purpose for that meeting. 7 of 9 does not need a pep talk. That's how I look at it. What do you think?
That wasn't my read. I actually took it a little bit more innocently that everybody on that bridge watched the way that Shaw treated her. He also has been treating her, with a bit of disdain. We haven't figured out exactly why, but we know that he has issues about, especially not allowing her to go by her Borg designation. And so I think that once she was off, I think she feels that affinity for 7. She also knows that through her parentage of Geordi LaForge as her father, who served with Picard, she knows that Picard and Riker are stand-up officers, stand-up men, stand-up people. And she saw the way that Picard related to 7. And she, probably already had formed her own opinions about 7, but seeing Picard, treat her that way too, she's like, she doesn't deserve to be treated like this. She's the real deal. So I think she was trying to, do what she thought would be good. Maybe there is more to it. Maybe you saw something I didn't see. Well, I mean, it sounds like you did see something I didn't see.
Well, because the message was so simple, and I have a feeling that as shipmates, they know each other well, and they couldn't communicate what they wanted to say either on the comms or in front of this guy in plain language. They were saying something else to one another to alert one another of what's going on. 7 of 9, as I said, doesn't need a pep talk. And it's okay that she responded the way she did, but there was she had to communicate with 7 of 9 at that moment. She could have said that over the comms. She didn't have to go and see her in person.
Perhaps. Maybe that's not her character.
We have another super chat, Julian, from Carlos Fonts for another $5 super chat. Thank you, Carlos, for the generosity here to the Burnettwork. We appreciate it. Carlos says, upon rewatch, I found it bittersweet when Jack told Picard that it was nice meeting him before the USS Titan A showed up to save the day. What do you think, Julian?
Well, given that later on we find out she's like, I told Jack where he could find you. I encouraged him to find you, and he didn't, So for him, obviously at that point, he knew this is Jean-Luc Picard, and this is apparently my father. This is what my mom says, And so, yeah, for him to say, it was kind of a rueful, well, it was good to meet you. Knowing or feeling, that we're not going to have that time to know each other. But it sounds like he didn't really care that much because he didn't take that time, or maybe he was regretting that he didn't take that time to try and, because, he shows up, Picard shows up, and he's trying to do everything to help him, regardless, whoever, because he doesn't know exactly who this guy is at first, but he's trying to do the stand-up thing. And so that must have, worked on Jack a little bit to have made this decision for years not to seek him out. And then suddenly this guy shows up in his life, tries to help him, and is like, maybe I made the wrong decision. Maybe I should have figured out who he was. But,
well, I think you make a good point about this, especially since they don't even know if they're going to live and die through this. And so this is, family. This is mediation, family mediation under duress. The extreme version. And we only have a few hours to work this out, and it's game over, and see you in the afterlife. We don't even know. It is very funny to see how people are kind of working under fire, and perhaps there is a lot of emotions, as Mr. Fonts mentions, regarding how people react, not knowing how to respond to a situation like this. Because I don't know how I respond to a situation like this, Julian and Mr. Fonts. I have no idea what I would say, except for, wow. What I could say is that I would tell the man. I certainly wouldn't hold back that information, and it would be a little different kind of cycle to go through, because at least he would know that the person existed, and not have to have gee whiz, you exist, and you didn't want to come and see me at the same time. Way too many emotions for him to have to deal with, and to also save the day. Now, Julian, the ship is Sabotage, and as someone says of the Beastie Boys, it's Sabotage, and it's I can't stand it. I know you planned it. Yes, that's exactly what's going on in the ship. Oh my gosh, it's Sabotage. So you can just hear the Beastie Boys music in the background, and so we're going, So, but what's really interesting is how Jake seems to figure this out, which is really neat. I thought that was cool. That's cool. I mean, he's not an engineer, he's a doctor, and yet he manages to figure out that they're being tracked. At least the captain, how do they track us? How do they find us? And he's like, yeah, it's a good question. I figured it out. This is cool. Everybody figures it out from watching it. I did not figure it out. But once they verbally said it, I figured it, I could follow it. But Julian, it feels like it's an impossible foe to fight against. And as someone did mention, while Seven of Nine and he are trying to figure it out, and he kind of shows his bravado a few times, because he must have gotten out of some sticky situations while he's traversing through the galaxy. I have to question a lot in the notion of, Seven of Nine, who is incredibly intelligent, has had more experiences in the galaxy. What was she, a child when she was assimilated, unfortunately, and has had, a different type of experience as a galaxy explorer. And somebody who, it's just a little different for her. I have to wonder, why was it that, after she met with him and they knew it was sabotage, she kind of left him alone. And I thought to myself, isn't this a little dangerous? They know that there's somebody walking around. What if the person who comes back looks like Seven of Nine and it's not her? Like, this is the thing that I think is very interesting regarding that, Julian. I'm not blaming Seven of Nine. This is not a blame game, but it was incredibly dangerous, them kind of traipsing off, and they did report it and everything. But it did kind of feel like it's just Seven of Nine and just Jake doing this. What did you think about that? They reported it, but there just didn't seem to be enough time to react to all of this. What did you think about it?
Well, first, we kind of go back to earlier in the show. They're in the nebula, and they think because the sensors are all whacked that they've managed to get away, and Vatic manages to find them. And in fact, the crew says they're where you said they would be, and you're wondering, whoa, they must have something else from Daystrom that's helping them navigate. How did they know that, that was the position they were going to be in? And they hit him hard. Shaw is severely injured and is taken to sick bay.
I'm out of here. I'll give you can take it. I don't want to. I'm outies. I'm done.
Yes.
I've never seen anybody really
blaming Riker and Picard, and he gives over command of the ship to Riker and says, "This is your fault. You get us out of here."
See ya.
Yeah, and so yes, that does lead to him wondering, how did they find us? How did they find? He is like, it kind of he's thinking about the problem. He's almost dying, but he's thinking about how the hell did they find us. He's thinking about the problem, and it reminded me at a moment. It reminded me of Spock in Journey to Babel when he's trying to think the problem with the Orions, which he doesn't know they're Orions at first, but he's trying to think of how is it that they are able to do what they are doing, and he wants to get back into the action and go, I need to tell the captain this. Anyway. So, yes, Shaw is nearing death because the doctor in sickbay has never seen this kind of injuries and action before, obviously. She's new to deep space, it seems, because Beverly comes and saves the day by saying he missed this. And Jack, who we see him helping in the sickbay with other members of the crew that are injured, and this gives us he's not just a flim-flam guy. He's not the guy that we're presented with in the second episode where he's like, trying to rob Peter to pay Paul and to do this, He has some knowledge of working medicine because of his mother and what they've been doing, and he is there to help. He could have just gone off somewhere else, but no, he's helping. And for him to hear Shaw saying, how did they find us? And for him to go, that's a good question. That's a damn good question. How did they find us? How did they find us? Right? It's like, so for him to go to Seven, who was with the Fenris Rangers, and he knows what their kind of operating procedures are like, that there might be something that she has some knowledge that might help them. They do find what they're looking for fairly quickly. Convenient for the show. But to also realize that it is sabotage, not just an accident. It's not, a thing that happened because of the battle. It's deliberate sabotage. That was pretty cool.
And then we do have that cool scene, Julian, which if you haven't already mentioned it, I cannot remember at this moment, but where we get to see the portal weapon now for the second time, let's say, being used against let's say a Federation location. You can't run because I have a portal that's going to bring you right back.
Mm-hmm.
You can't fire on us because I have a portal that's going to make it. And I think that you and I both agree that when we saw them fire everything, we wondered why on earth would they do that, knowing that they can use that portal weapon to bring it right back to the ship. I wondered about that. You wondered about that. We're all wondering, like, why would you do this? I'm still wondering about this. Did anybody have any explanation as to why they would do this?
That is the one failing decision that, Picard was so earlier in the scene when they jumped on him and Riker and Picard took over command on the bridge. They come up with this great plan to dump a photon torpedo out and not have it travel. Then they set it off with a phaser blast, and the concussion knocks the Shrike out of the out for a while. So they're able to kind of get out of there. And yeah, they're on the verge of getting out of the nebula so that they can go to warp. And the Shrike uses the portal weapon on him. Now, the first time we see it used, we see this glob of energy flying past them, which then forms the portal, which happens so quickly that they're not able to get out of the way, which was kind of strange. I thought ships could maneuver a little bit faster than that, but okay, so they can't get out of the way, and it happens right in front of them. They come out, and they're back into the nebula, and then it happens again, and they're right in front of the Shrike, practically, coming out on their beam, their starboard beam. And so it's like it was different. I think they shot that ball again, so you can kind of see where it's heading. And they've had it happen to them twice. And so for Picard to say, fire or we need to fight them, knowing that there's a portal weapon, and then when it finally happens and they can't go to warp anyway, and they're going to lose energy, and so Riker says, fire everything we've got. It's like, what about the portal weapon? Hello? Pretty bad choice. Not only that, we don't see it actually form in front of them, so we don't know if they saw it. It would seem to me that if you know that there's this thing that happens, this event that has to happen before the portal opens up, that you could avoid it. It's like, okay, the portal's going to open there. We need to have planned to be there, when it opens up so that they miss. And they should have at least thought about that when they fired. I
got to give them a lot of credit for using the weapon, for them utilizing the weapon. But after the second use of the weapon, I was confused. I'm like, where are they? I don't know where they are. They don't know where they are. Where are they? Like in sort of like XYZ position, they could be anywhere. It's quite a disjarring and somewhat unsettling weapon. In addition to, it just really shakes you up. It's like somebody grabbing you and holding you upside down and flinging you right and left, and then go ahead and figure out where you are. It's like I have to kind of reorientate myself. What just happened? But we keep hearing these messages about, I think somebody said in the science officer, whose name is there, but I don't know what her name is, about it being having some kind of biological element in the nebula. She doesn't say that they should go in. There might be some kind of gravitational warp or whatever it is. But at the same time, Raffi and Worf encounter a shapeshifter too. So we see these two shapeshifters, not one, but two in the same episode. One that has a complete collapse and gets destroyed by Worf. And they realize that they have to go back to, is it the Lundstrom or where Daystrom? They have to go back to Daystrom, saying that there was something else there that was taken that was important, although I don't know what it is. And they do talk about the Dominion War. There's a lot of Dominion talk. going on, which was also very interesting. But the shapeshifter who was still on, and we saw his face, Jake saw him. The shapeshifter who's still on the Titan is still there, and they're not ever going to be able to find him. How do you detect a shapeshifter? Can we detect shapeshifters?
I honestly, it's been so long since I watched Deep Space Nine. I can't remember what they figured out to do that. I thought it was some sort of blood. They would take a test, and but there was this whole thing about we've already thought about that, and we could always make sure that we had some human blood in us to make sure that that's what you took, and you wouldn't know that it was actually planted in us to make it look like we were human, all this kind of stuff. So I think it was established they'd already kind of thought ahead about that. I do know that there was the virus that they'd figured out that could have been planted into the Great Link and would have wiped them all out, and which is what precipitated the truce. Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah. But you always maybe if you were going to keep where would the Federation want to keep the procedures for making that virus if you ever needed it? Perhaps Daystrom.
On the Daystrom?
and perhaps maybe the shapeshifter, the changelings, maybe they have figured out or are going to use that as a way of figuring out a way to reverse it so it would kill all solids. That would be.
Yeah, that is very scary.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's something that Jake knows about. I don't know. As a scientist, you study all sorts of phenomenon, and you don't share all the details with everybody, except maybe his mother might know. But perhaps he did see something very special or witness something, because we already know he's seeing visions. So we know he knows a little bit more than he's letting on. And, perhaps that's his reason why he doesn't necessarily want to be too connected to anybody. If he becomes too close to anyone, he might feel compelled to tell them different things that he knows that could affect them and put them in danger. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But what did you think about I'm going to call it banter between Riker and Picard on the ship about what they need to do and what they don't need to do? Nobody was entirely right or wrong on the ship. Are two heads better than one?
Normally I would say so, and they were working together very well at first. But when they're kind of living their own, they're reliving the Kobayashi Maru, only the stakes are real this time. And we know that from all their history, they have lived through these moments over and over and over again. And so for them to become so much at loggerheads, yes, perhaps they're both right. But I think Riker is a little bit more right, because they are totally outgunned. To sit there and go, oh, just because we've figured out how they were finding us doesn't mean you can still get them. It's like if Picard had come up with some sort of a plan at that point to say, here's how we could do it. All he said was, they don't know that we know how they were finding us. We can use that to our advantage. But Riker's like, yeah, but they still outgun us. How would we use it to our advantage? Other than, showing up where they wouldn't expect us. But we've seen how powerful their ship is. There's nothing, they're not going to get through the shields. So it was kind of silly for Picard to continue to say, we need to fight them now. And I feel like the argument between the two of them was kind of fabricated. It felt a little bit too, this is because the plot demands that they need to be at this point. It didn't feel authentic enough. And it was the one thing really that hit me. I know I've seen other stuff. People have said, "Oh, this didn't feel right," and that didn't feel right. That was the one thing that really kind of struck me as weird. I'm like, that doesn't feel right. It feels odd, and I still think that it may be related to whatever it was that happened with Riker for him to feel that Deanna and their daughter would be happy for him to be gone for a while. That there was obviously something going on there, and so I'm waiting to find out if it's related to that, to find out why. I'm expecting that there'll be some point in the next episode where Riker and Jean-Luc are going to be like, "I'm sorry, I was wrong," type of a thing, a rapprochement. I hope, but
Well, my last question tonight is, and they've hinted at it enough times, Julian. What is living inside of this nebula?
I don't know. I think maybe if Jack is having some visions, and you hinted that maybe it was kind of had something to do, maybe it was like the prophets from the wormhole, maybe it was, we've had hints, we're dealing with changelings, maybe Deep Space Nine is a little bit more involved here than we think. I honestly did at the end of the series, Deep Space Nine, did they close up the wormhole? Was it was like closed on one end, wasn't it? I thought. And Cisco went into the wormhole to stay with the prophets or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this nebula is an extension of the prophets, or maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. I've been trying to. I'm like, I don't. There's been hints. People have said, "Oh, what about like the immunity syndrome, or what about?" Somebody even mentioned something from the animated series, like one of our ships is missing, or one of our planets is missing, where it was like some sort of a living entity type of a thing. So I don't know. I'm just waiting to see what they give us. I'm intrigued enough and curious enough. Want to see.
I can't wait for the next episode, Julian. So I guess I'll see you. The next time will be at 2 a.m., I'm hoping. And everybody, for the super chats, thank you for your generosity tonight. And of course, Tom Jr. Jackson, we are all good people. Thank you for moderating tonight. Julian, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Julian Mushkin. I also was reminded I have a channel on YouTube of sorts, Julian Mushkin. If you go there, you'll see a very old video I did when I was in animation school, and a bunch of links to our videos. Yay!
Excellent, guys. Check out Julian on his channel. You can also contact him here on the Burnettwork, soon to be Imagination Connoisseurs Unlimited. Guys, you can contact me on my channel, Positive Fandom. Of course, you guys know I am the creative content director right here on the Burnettwork. You can also contact me here. Sometimes I stream with Lorena Creole on her channel, as well as on the 1/6 Scale Man Network. So do please check that out. Julie and I will continue to review this show, have our live watch parties, do our reviews at 11 on Friday nights. Julian, thank you so much for joining me again to talk about the show that has been incredible so far. I've been enjoying it so much. And you have as well, correct?
I have. I thank you for having me join you for this dive into season 3 of Picard. It's been enjoyable.
Thank you. Yeah. Here, Julian, and everybody out there, thank you for watching. Like I said, Julie and I are going to continue this deep dive, as well as the live watch parties, which will start at 2 a.m. next time. Thank God. So we will see you next week, guys. Thank you, everybody, for everything and for watching. And guys, live long and prosper. But always, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind. Take care, everyone.